Hello all, this is John from eastcoastarmory.com, and I'm here today with a project update video for this 1/6 scale Armortek Late Production German Tiger 1. Since the last video update, a lot of progress has been made to both the engine compartment as well as the rear portion of the vehicle. We'll be going over these upgrades in this video. Starting with the model's engine bay, to complete the lower portion of the engine bay, I went ahead and fabricated the two lower fuel tanks. The Tiger 1 had 4 gas tanks mounted in the rear portion of the vehicle. 2 were mounted on the top portion here of the sponson, 1 on each side, and then the other 2 were mounted on underneath the main fuel tank in the bottom portion here of the hull. This is also a mirror image on the reverse side. Since the fuel tanks will be visible from the open engine hatch, I went ahead and fabricated the fuel tanks. The fuel tanks themselves are made out of solid resin and are a newly addition to the eastcoastarmory.com product line. The set includes both right and left hand fuel tanks. All of their detailing is present on the casting, and the set also includes the small drainage plugs that we see here. These versions that you see here are just a sample set. Another set was made for the intent of mounting inside of this vehicle. They are the same exact casting, only difference is that the back portions have been milled away in order to have the fuel tank properly fit inside of the engine compartment and fit with the Armortek idler adjuster, as well as the other mounting fasteners and hardware which are used to comprise that of the engine bay wall, which was shown in a previous video. Because the fuel tanks are solid resin, machining the cutaways was a fairly easy process. Also, because they are hollow, they are also very easy to mount to the vehicle. In order to mount these, I simply drill 2 holes into the resin casting, 2 more holes into the plastic engine bay compartment wall, and they will simply be mounted with countersunk fasteners. Because this model is an Armortek kit, the kit features several nice engineering features on the inside portion of this part here of the hull, which are designed to have the tank be a reliable runner. Unfortunately, because of these features, I am not going to be able to add certain details to the interior portion of the engine compartment that normally would be added on one of my other builds. What I'm referring to is the way the model has its torsion bar suspension and the way it has its idler adjustment mechanism. Because of the idler adjustment mechanism and its importance, I won't be able to add on the detail component for that of the actual idler adjustment mechanism, which is found on the real tank. Also, because of the torsion bars themselves, I will not be able to fabricate the interior rigidity bulkhead, which runs along the bottom portion of the hull and is found on the real Tiger 1. Luckily though, these 2 components that I referred to are not visible once the engine is in place and the engine compartment is completed. Before I continue with the engine compartment detailing with adding the exhaust ductwork, I needed to first assemble the tank's exhaust system. In addition to the tank's exhaust system, I also had to install and add on all the rest of the components on the rear portion of the vehicle. With the rear portion of the vehicle now complete, I am now unhindered in working on the engine compartment and working on it till its completion. The first most obvious thing that was added to the vehicle was its coat of Zemrit anti-magnetic mine coating. The Zemrit coating was applied and has been hand sculpted to the way we see it here. When I was applying the Zemrit, to keep the Zemrit from places where it's not needed, namely behind the exhausts and around the idler mounts and around the mud flap area, I first used masking tape to go ahead and cover up the places beforehand. After the Zemrit was applied, I simply just peel the tape and thus removing the unneeded material with nice, clean, crisp cut edges. Moving our way to the model's rear fenders, the kit supplies you with 2 rear mud flaps. The mud flaps themselves are adequately done in that they are fully functional. The side hinging mechanism works, as well as the whole mud flap itself is designed to go up and down, just like the real vehicle. However, instead of using the kit supply fenders, I went ahead and replaced those with a pair of aftermarket fenders from 6-scale Icons. The 6-scale Icon fenders are a little bit more accurate than the kit originals. They are made out of brass, come pre-soldered together with their support ribs, and if we notice, the hinging mechanism is more prototypical compared to that of the stock Armortek. The fenders themselves come as a kit and are unassembled. They give you all of the photo etch brass components as well as all the little fasteners required to assemble them together. They also come with a set of instructions in order to assemble them properly. One of the reasons why I'm replacing the stock Armortek mud flaps with the 6-scale Icon ones is because the stock Armortek mud flaps represent that of an earlier Tiger. This tank, being the later production unit, would have been more accurate to receive the versions here. The Armortek fenders are not going to be discarded. In fact, they're going to be kept in my spare parts bin and saved for a rainy day. And here go the completed fenders. Like I mentioned before, the fenders are full function, and they assemble just like the real one. In addition to assembling like the real one, they also open up like the real one. If we notice here, we have the side flap lock, and it keeps the side flap from opening up. To open it up, we simply loosen up the wing nut, slide the crossbar out of the way, and the unit can now hinge open. In addition to all of the finely detailed fasteners that come with the kit, it also features its back level of detailing as well. It has the rigidity angle braces on it on both the flap as well as the fender itself. As you can notice, I soldered all of the components together to the piece, which gives it a lot of strength and will keep it nice and sturdy for years to come. These fenders are highly recommended and are suitable for use on any 1/6 scale late production Tiger 1 on the market. I believe 6-scale Icons also has a similar set, which is designed for the earlier production of Tiger 1s. As for the fenders themselves, one thing to keep of note is that they are not a simple drop-in installation. The pieces themselves are kits in their own right and do require assembly to put them together. Not only assembly, you also need to have, the builder needs to have a small background in metalworking in order to bend and press all the pieces to their final shape. In addition to the background needed to assemble these, they also require a little bit of tooling. As for tooling, these fenders here were assembled with my bench vise, a drill press, pair of needle nose pliers, as well as a soldering iron. And here's the mud flap mounted to the vehicle. As you can see, the fastener locations that were built into the hinges here have been thoroughly covered up with the bodywork and sanded flush and smooth. One thing as of note on these later production Tigers is that the mud flaps mount flush directly to the rear hull. This was a change in the design from the original version of the Tiger 1, which had a box frame welded to this area here. Armortek does supply you with the box frame component, and it is nicely done, and it's made out of laser cut steel. However, since this tank being a late production tank, the box frame was deleted, and the pieces were mounted as per the instructions supplied with 6-scale Icons. Some of the other fittings from Steve Winston have also been mounted, namely that of the tubular taillight as well as the reflector light. Now currently they're covered in protective masking tape, and the masking tape will be removed after the model is completed with its painting. The pieces installed very simply and do really help the look of the model. Moving our way to the starter plate cover. The starter plate cover itself is the Armortek kit original and was installed as per the kit. The only addition that was made was the addition of the little cone acorn that we have here, which is present on the actual vehicle. The cone here is just a resin nub that I went ahead and turned on the lathe. Once I machined it, it was simply glued to the kit supplied hex bolt. Moving our way to the rear tow hitch. The rear tow hitch is the Armortek kit original, and the kit does supply you with a very decent tow hitch. What was added to the tow hitch was the Resin EastCoastArmory.com tow pin, as well as the bottom plate portion here of the tow hitch itself. The Armortek kit is missing this little section here. To fabricate it, it was a simple rectangle which was cut out of plastic, glued to the vehicle, and then the fasteners were also added. With the addition of the bottom half here, the tow hitch's accuracy is greatly improved. Another area to point out is this portion here of the vehicle. On the mid-production early versions of the Tiger 1, there would be a toolbox located in this section here. However, that feature was dropped on the later production units, and so that's why we do not have this location or this little detail on this model. Instead, on these versions of the Tiger 1, they featured the tow hook, which would have been affixed to this location here. Now, Armortek does supply you with a cast bronze tow hook, which is very nicely done and is very functional. They also supply you with the hardware needed to affix it to the hull. Now, the Armortek components work just fine. However, since this model received a coat of Zemerite, the Armortek components proved to be a little tight once added to the vehicle. The hook itself was really held on there too tight and was actually very difficult to get the straps in their place. Because of that, I went ahead and fabricated brand new mounting studs, which are made out of turned brass, as well as longer fasteners. The pieces still hook on the exact same way. And once the tow shackle is fitted to the vehicle, the little snaps and straps simply just get tightened on. The tow shackle itself will be painted and weathered after the vehicle is painted and gets its camouflage. On the opposite side of the vehicle, we have here the jack mounts. This location here pretty much stayed the same throughout the Tiger 1's entire production run. The jack mounts themselves are the versions which are offered on the EastCoastArmory.com product line. They're made out of resin and are fully functional. As for the jack itself, the kit supplies you with a nice white metal and resin jack from armorpax.com. The Armorpax jack simply mounts to the vehicle the same way it would on the real one. One thing that I like to do on these Armortek idler caps that are found on the German tanks is that the Armortek kit did a very nice job with supplying you with the piece. The piece itself is all made out of CNC'd aluminum and is all pre-drilled and is ready to install right out of the box. No detail mods need to be made to the cap itself. One thing that I do like to do though is that the ring that's pre-machined into the cover cap is so tightly made with its tight tolerances that when it comes to inserting it and removing it off the vehicle, the fit might be a little bit too snug. So to loosen it up, what I like to do is I like to turn down the inner ring here so that the cover will slip on a lot easier than if it was left stock. Now, to turn down the ring, you could use a Dremel with a sanding drum. However, it will not come out as neat as if you use a machine lathe. For this procedure, I will be using the lathe. The piece just simply gets put inside of the chuck. The lathe gets turned on, and I'll probably remove it probably about 100 thousandths off of the ring here. And here goes the turn down piece. Because of the material that the cap is made of, the piece machines very easily and very quickly. Now that the piece is all trimmed down, the cap will receive a quick shot of primer, and then it will be affixed to the vehicle. Before I continue any further, I needed to complete the model's exhaust system. For the tank's exhaust system, the kit supplies you with all the components that you see here. That includes the exhaust stacks, the armored exhaust covers, as well as the sheet metal exhaust guards. Even though all these components are supplied with the kit, they did receive several modifications to them, which I'll be going over now. To start with the model's exhaust stacks, the kit supplies you with two very nicely done CNC aluminum exhaust manifolds. The exhausts themselves are pre-drilled out and are designed to work with the Armortek smoke system. They attach to the hull with a single brass turn fitting that is pre-threaded and mounts directly into the stack itself. The kit also supplies you with the stack having its fastener locations pre-drilled and pre-tapped, as well as the rain guard. The rain guard on the Tiger One is a simple steel disc that has holes in it, and it gets fixed over the top of the exhaust manifold. The purpose of the rain guard is to prevent water from going into the exhaust manifold, even though the exhaust does have a puffer cap installed. The guard on the kit is all laser cut out of steel and is all pre-drilled, ready for installation. The kit exhaust stack also comes with a steel disc for plugging up the bottom portion of the exhaust manifold. What was added to the Armortek kit was that of the puffer cap detail. The puffer cap that you see here is fabricated out of resin and is made with parts from the EastCoastArmory.com product line. There are a puffer cap set listed on the ECA product line, however, they are slightly larger than that required for that of the Armortek exhaust system. This version here is a one-off piece, however, a Armortek specific set is in the works. In addition of adding the puffer cap, if we notice, the entire exhaust stacks have their weathering applied to them. The purpose of weathering them now is because once they are installed, they will be very difficult to get to with all of the equipment in the way. So they get weathered and painted now, and then once installed, they will be protected with masking tape as well as tissue paper. This will protect the exhaust stacks throughout the duration of the build. As for the weathering, they have their rust texturing as well as coloring added. In addition to the rust, they also have their soot and grime added with an airbrush. Moving on from the manifolds, we have here the exhaust covers. The exhaust armored covers are, again, started off as the Armortek kit originals. The Armortek does supply you with a very nice set of exhaust covers. They are made out of a solid piece of CNC aluminum and are ready to be installed out of the box. Some modifications that I made to them are as follows. On the Tiger One exhaust cover, there is a small little notch that is cut on the bottom third portion of both exhaust covers. In addition to adding the little notch via milling machine, I went ahead and added the two lift rings which are found on either side of the cover itself. These lifting bolts are made out of turned steel and are available on the EastCoastArmory.com product line for both Tiger 1s and Tiger 2s. Another modification that was made were the divots for the fasteners. These divots are added on each location where the fasteners are found on the actual unit. The divots were easily added on via the milling machine. Another very noticeable modification that was made to the Armortek unit was that of the cast texturing that we see here. Because of the way the pieces are manufactured via the CNC, they have a very smooth and crisp appearance to them. The real units were made out of cast metal, so the cast texturing was just simply added. With the addition of the cast texturing along with a casting number, it greatly improves the look of the piece, especially once it's installed onto the vehicle. The cast texturing was added to both units that we have here. Another modification that was made was also rounding off of the edges of the unit itself. On the stock Armortek kit, they were just simply squared off. A simple pass on the belt sander improve the look, making it more prototypical. Also, just like with the exhaust, the inside portion has been weathered with the airbrushing as well as the rust detailing. In addition to the interior, the exterior also has some light airbrushing added to it. This is because once the sheet metal covers go on, it will be very difficult to get to this component. So I took advantage of the ease of accessibility now, as opposed to once it's fitted to the vehicle. Moving on to the last component of the exhaust system is that of the sheet metal covers. The Tiger One featured two pressed sheet metal guards that went over the exhaust manifold and protected the exhaust system from any obstructions or any type of impact. On the Armortek kit, the kit supplies you with two very nice pre-bent, pre-drilled and shaped steel guards. The guards themselves are very much like the real ones and mount to the tank in the same manner with that of fasteners. The one modification that I made to the guard was that I added the pressed rigidity stamping on the top and bottom portion. Because of the thickness of the metal used, I was not able to press in the rigidity blister that we have here. So rather than pressing in the blister, I went ahead and simply took a half round stock of strip plastic and simply affixed it to the guard. I did it to both the top and the bottom, as well as a mirror image on the other unit. Once the piece is glued on and is thoroughly affixed to the sheet metal guard, it gives the illusion of the pressings. Just like with the other exhaust system components that I showed earlier, the inside of the guard was also pre-weathered with the rust as well as the sooting. The exterior, if we notice, I left plain because the weathering will be added to this location after the vehicle is painted and its pattern has been applied. Before I can go ahead and mount the exhaust system to the rear portion of the vehicle, if you notice, I went ahead and first primed and base coated the rear portion of the tank. Once the base coat was done, I went ahead and with the airbrush again, I added the exhaust soot on the areas of the rear hull that I can't get access to once the pieces are installed. And here go the exhaust affixed to the vehicle. Now, just like on the real vehicle, the exhaust need to be put on layers. Namely, first you install the canister, then you install the armor cover, and then to cap it off, you install. Before I go ahead and mount on the sheet metal heat shields, I wanted to point out a feature that is found on Tiger Ones, and that is the way the armor covers affix to the vehicle. A common mistake I've seen on Tiger One models is that when they come to mount this piece to the vehicle, they use a hex head, and the hex head, most of the time, they just simply bolt it from the outside with a nut on the inside. On the real Tiger One, it's actually the opposite. This is because on the real Tiger One, the threaded rods that were used to affix on the heat shields or the armor covers were actually welded to the rear of the vehicle itself, and then nuts were just simply threaded on to secure the pieces to the vehicle. To do this on the vehicle, on the model here, you just simply put the nuts on in reverse, in that you have the bolt running through the rear hull, and then you fix it with the fastener detail on the exterior. As we can see here, that's what I've done. A small little trick, but it does help the look of the vehicle. Another bit of detailing that I wanted to point out before I install the heat shields is that of the added heat shield mounting bosses. On the Tiger One, just like with the side fenders, the heat shields were actually affixed to the hull via welded on little bosses. The bosses would have been square pieces of steel which were tapped and to which were then welded to the vehicle in the places where the heat shield would mount on. These bosses are not included for the heat shields on the Armortek tank, and to fabricate them I simply took a piece of square Plastruct 1/4-inch square tubing, and on the lathe I cut several sections that are all equal in width. These sections were then just glued to the vehicle, and then when it comes time to mounting on the bosses, it gives you that elevated look, which is needed on the Tiger 1. The bosses are in each location where the heat shield mounts to the vehicle. Also, as of note, if you're modeling the Tiger 1 and you don't want to have the heat shield on, but want to have just the bosses in their place, for that, we're going to go ahead and fill in the 1/4 inch square tubing and add an appropriate size hole for which, on the real tank, the fastener would be threaded on. Since these bosses are going to be covered up, the square tubing hole that we see here is not going to be visible once the heat shield is installed to the tank. And here goes the model with the heat shield affixed to the vehicle. With the heat shields installed, that completes the exterior portion of the exhaust system on the Tiger 1. And with that, that concludes this project update video for this 1/6 scale Armortek radio controlled late production Tiger 1. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. And don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 scale tank builds, as well as other 1/6 scale detail components. Thank you.